Have you ever started a road trip and you pull up the Maps app or Waze or Google Maps or whatever it is that you're using and you don't know the destination? My name is Christina Strickland. I'm the managing partner of Rally Wealth and Benefits, and today we're going to talk about beginning with the end in mind. So as we're working through financial planning with young adults and investors and people nearing retirement, one of the biggest questions that we get asked is, am I going to make it? Have I done enough to reach my goal? And I think the most important part that we need to articulate is, what is the actual goal? What I mean by that is, what are we saving for? And not only what are we saving for, when is it going to happen? I met with an individual yesterday, and the goal of the conversation was, are they on track to retire? Well, the simple questions were, how old do you want to be when you retire? It could be that, 65, 70, 55, anything. We don't really care what the answer is. We just want to know what you want to do. When do you want to retire? How much do you think you're going to need in retirement? Or maybe the goal is not retirement. When is your child going to go to college? When do you plan to buy that new house? Whatever the goal is, when is the goal supposed to happen? The way I like to frame that is, for me to know that I've done well, what will that look like? And so beginning with the end in mind is, what is the blue skies and rainbows answer? It will look like I will retire at 65 years old and I will have $5,000 a month to pay my bills. Whatever that number may look like for you, that's totally fine, but now I've articulated, I'm going to retire at this age and I'm going to have X amount of dollars every month to pay my bills. Or again, my child's gonna go to college in 6 years. They're gonna go to a public state college. I'm going to fund all of their tuition, but they're gonna buy their books and they're spending money. As long as we've articulated what it is that we're trying to achieve. And then how much does that cost? So let's stick with the goal of retirement. I'm going to retire at 65. I need $5,000 a month to live on. That's $60,000 a year. I'm hopefully gonna live for at least 30 years. Well, 60,000, 30 years, $1.8 million. Now I know that's my goal. How much do you currently have saved towards that goal? So if we stick with this retirement goal, do you have a 401k? Do you have a 403b, 457, IRA, Roth IRA? Maybe you have a pension from an old employer or a current employer. How much is your Social Security projected to be? All of those items that count towards meeting that goal. Then what we also take, an assumed growth rate. And this is actually one of the things that I think is super important for the plan, because I've met with many individuals that as they're working through a financial plan and they're thinking with the end in mind, they know what their goal is, they know when they want to achieve that goal and how much it's going to cost, but we need to know an assumed growth rate. And what I mean by that is, how much do you want to plan on your portfolio returning each year? And the thing that I see most people do wrong is they will overshoot their growth rate. So it is very common for individuals to come in and say, hey, I'm gonna retire in 20 years. I'm saving 10% of my savings into my 401k plan. I'm getting a match from my company. I just need to earn 12% a year to make it happen. The issue with that is that while 12% rate of return is likely, it's not likely consistent. There are events that happen in the markets almost daily that would impact a person's rate of return. And so what I want to caution people on is, have a conservative rate of return for two reasons. One, I don't want anyone losing sleep at night if their portfolio didn't return 12% this year, because that's what their plan needed. And two, I don't want anyone losing sleep at night if an event happens in the market. And so if possible, if you can, try to make your goal with maybe 6 to 8% assumed rate of return. And if you do better, that's great. That's the cherry on top of the ice cream, right? But in general, the more conservative we can be with our assumed rate of return, the more likelihood we are of having a successful retirement. And so if we can, again, maybe 6 to 8% assumed growth rate, maybe your plan is able to work if you only get 3 to 4% growth. Again, even better. The lower we can assume for our growth rate, the more successful your plan should be. Because if on average the markets do better, again, that's just extra money in the tank, if you will, or extra for your portfolio. So the biggest thing there with that assumed growth rate is taking an appropriate risk level. And so that 12% rate of return that this individual needed for their plan to work, that was probably appropriate when they were in their 20s and 30s. They had a long time horizon, so they could take more risks. So because they could have enough time to recover from potential movement in the market, right? So if a 30-year-old goes through a 2008 type market event, they have 30 years to recover before they're going to retire. But if I'm going to retire in 10 years and I'm experiencing a 2008 type event, that may actually impact whether or not I'm going to be able to retire at the same time or whether or not I'm going to be able to spend the same amount of money. And so with that assumed growth rate, we have to understand reducing risk over time. There's a very real change between accumulation phase of life and actually spending your money phase of life. So we need to take that into account. The other major question is how much can be contributed to that goal. So I've defined I want to retire or send my kid to college or buy that second house at this time. I've defined how much I think that's going to cost me. I've defined how much I already have saved towards that goal and how much I'm going to assume that savings is going to grow by each year. Now I need to articulate how much can I contribute to that goal. And so at Rally Wealth and Benefits, we use a lot of tools where we can plug in all of that data and say, okay, if you do X, Y, Z, you already have this saved, you already can contribute this much, and your growth rate based on your risk level is, again, somewhere between 4 to 7%, then it gives us a pretty good likelihood of where that is projected to be, where that portfolio is projected to be when the time comes to actualize or realize that goal. And so one of our tools that I really, really love runs 1,000 simulations based on previous market data, and it will give you all 1,000 outcomes. And it will also tell you, hey, based on these 1,000 simulations, 785 of them came out that you hit your goal and you actually have a little bit left over. So then we can have that conversation of, okay, 785 of those simulations look fantastic. Well, what about the other 215? Is 785 enough to feel confident? For most people, probably. That's a pretty good indication that things are on the right track. But if you want to have maybe 900 simulations turn out great, then we need to look at what can we tweak so these other 115 also turn out great. So again, the best way to do that is to begin with the end in mind. Be very, very clear about what your definition of meeting your goal looks like. Again, it's kind of like the whole maps thing. I can't ask my GPS or my instruction giving tool to tell me what to do if I haven't told it where we're going. And so that's the number one piece with any financial plan is, where are we going? What does that look like? If you need help with that or any other financial planning tools, please reach out to us at Rally Wealth and Benefits. We'd love to help.